So Intel's Lunar Lake is coming. They've taken the wrappers off, and we now know what these new laptop processors are all about. And the first thing you've got to know is that this is not your typical laptop CPU refresh. This is a fundamental rethink by Intel about what a laptop CPU should look like. There are extreme things going on here for power savings. There are architectural changes from the last generation. There's a massive GPU upgrade. The packaging itself has changed. And probably the most controversial of everything, Intel is moving away from hyper-threading. So what I wanted to do here is a simple breakdown of what Lunar Lake is, how it impacts the laptop market, and what it could mean for buyers when devices become available a little bit later this year.
Montech with another insane value product, the HyperFlow ARGB AIOs, available in black or white, 240 or 360 sizes, with full platform compatibility and friendly tools along the way that not only look gorgeous with pump lighting and matching blade illumination, but also performance that should satisfy with any hot silicon thanks to high-speed fans, high-density fins on the rad, a good pump, and daisy-chained fans for easy cable management, all backed by this 6-year warranty, so you don't have to worry. Check it out below.
And what exactly makes this processor series different from everything else? And I alluded to it a little bit before. It is this hyper focus by Intel on one metric that affects thin and light laptops like this one, and that is power consumption and overall efficiency of the entire platform. And to do that, there needed to be a complete rethink for core design and memory. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Intel has removed SMT or hyper-threading from their new P cores, which has allowed them to enhance performance per watt in single-threaded applications. And look, I completely understand why they did this for low-wattage laptop chips, since they're typically being used in pretty standard everyday home and office use, not as multi-threaded rendering powerhouses. The effect on overall package power versus Meteor Lake is pretty impressive, especially when compared across some of today's most commonly used apps. And these numbers are based on the 288V, the highest and most power-hungry chip in this new lineup. What this leads to is a massive increase in overall battery life, which is a dream come true for pretty much everyone looking for a thin and light laptop. According to what Intel showed, we're looking at numbers that could match or even beat current champions like the Snapdragon X Elite in everyday use cases. And at least from what I see, Intel isn't actually fudging these numbers by using a hopped up development chassis either. These are all done with the same ASUS laptop with identical battery capacity and power settings. It's as close to an apples to apples comparison that I've ever seen from one of these presentations, and above all else, this alone could be what sells Lunar Lake laptops to people. Intel, they still addressed overall performance by adding a huge shot of adrenaline to their efficiency cores, while also boosting the P core's IPC versus Meteor Lake. There's also a ton of changes in the backend that improve latencies and memory access. And with that evolution, Intel claims, and it's very important to mention this, these are Intel's claims, that in multi-threaded applications, an 8-core, 8-thread Lunar Lake CPU like the Core Ultra 9 288V can outperform the 14-thread 165U and match the Apple M3 while running at similar input power. That performance is very strictly tied to wattage though, since above 27 watts, the raw processing power of additional threads will always win out. Another interesting element of Lunar Lake is adding the system memory directly onto the SoC package right alongside the compute and platform controller dies. That makes Lunar Lake processors a simple drop-in solution for laptop manufacturers, since everything right down to Wi-Fi and I/O are integrated directly onto a single chip. There's no need for additional controllers or even memory on the PCB for that matter. There are a bunch of other benefits too, like faster transfer speeds, less overhead, and decreased power. But you guessed it, you can't upgrade the memory. The writing was on the wall for that anyways, since it's one of the sacrifices we've had to make for thinner, lighter laptop designs. So we have thinner, lighter, more efficient, potentially interesting performance. But if there's one thing, if you've watched any of our videos about Intel CPUs in the past, that they needed to do, that was actually just clean up their naming scheme, so there was a little bit more clarity to end users. It's also because in the past, there's been a bunch of laptop CPUs that basically walked over one another's toes. I mean, remember Meteor Lake U? Well, I almost didn't either. Even though it was considered Intel's low power champion, its configurable power settings ended up overlapping quite a bit with the H series. And those Meteor Lake H processors also ended up stepping on Raptor Lake's toes. So there were a ton of gaming laptops with 165H and 155H CPUs in them that could actually outperform some lower end Raptor Lake models. And Intel is actually hoping to simplify this whole mess by introducing two very distinct classes this time. You have Lunar Lake, which will run from 8 watts to 30 watts for thin and light non-gaming devices, and then above that will be Raptor Lake H, for now at least, because later this year, well, we expect Arrow Lake to take over the torch for gaming laptops by running from 35 watts to over 120 watts. So basically, the intent here isn't to create a one architecture fits all situation where this one CPU type will be in a million different devices at so many different power levels. What they did here is basically condense it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out through the remainder of the year. The other thing that Intel did, they've also simplified their naming scheme just a bit. First of all, there's the typical Core Ultra branding that's followed by a 5, 7, or 9 depending on a product segment. Then there's a 2 showing this is Core Ultra's second generation, and then a number that ranges from 2 to 8 designating a product's relative performance, where a higher digit means a higher end chip. The final number will either be a 6 or an 8, which refers to the amount of memory installed onto a specific CPU. 6 means 16 gigabytes, while 8 refers to 32 gigabytes. Looking at it from a wider perspective, every model will have 8 cores and 8 threads along with either 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes of memory running at 8,533 megatransfers per second. The only major difference from one model to the next, on the core side at least, is clock speeds. In addition to that, Ultra 5 CPUs get a cut to 8 megabytes of LLC versus the 12 megabytes on higher end chips. And input power, well, that's the real news here, and every Ultra 7 and 5 CPU can be configured from 8 watts to 30 watts, though Intel recommends 17 watts for the absolute best performance per watt. Meanwhile, with the Core Ultra 9 being a quasi-flagship CPU here, it gets more juice with a minimum power of 17 watts, though we'll likely see most designs running closer to 30 watts in order to hit its maximum clocks. The GPU and NPU are two other key points for these processors, and there are some differences here too. The higher end CPUs get an Arc GPU with more cores and higher clocks, along with a faster NPU. Meanwhile, the Ultra 5's NPU hits exactly 40 tops right on the nose. And why is that? Well, because that's the minimum spec Microsoft requires for Copilot plus PC branding. And we also need to talk about the GPU because it is such an integral part of Intel's focus for Lunar Lake. As a matter of fact, in our conversations with Intel, they actually told us that sacrifices were made in other areas of the core in order to free up some transistor space to just maximize the heck out of this new GPU. And that's very, very important because they've realized that in the grand scheme of things, yes, x86 processing is very, very important. So you need those P cores and the E cores. But GPU compute is gaining so much traction, especially with AI workloads. So it's more than just about increasing gaming on these devices. And that was addressed in a few major ways. There's new vector engines, upgraded cache, larger ray tracing units than the cut down ones which Meteor Lake used, and so much more. I have a deeper dive into XE2 coming up, so stay tuned for that. But overall, this translates into a solid 50% improvement on average versus Meteor Lake. And according to Intel's own internal testing against an AMD HX370 running at the same 30 watt power limit in an almost identical system, they're claiming an overall performance uplift of about 16%, which is sort of huge news since the HX370 is running AMD's latest 890M integrated graphics. Of course, we'll be independently testing this in the next few weeks, but I'm crossing my fingers here because more competition is good for everyone. But I don't want to set any unrealistic expectations here. This is a huge step in the right direction for ultra portable laptops, but it does not make them gaming PCs. Performance like this allows you to game at playable frame rates at low to medium settings, while upscaling through XeSS adds a bit more punch too. But supersizing this GPU has so many other benefits outside gaming. A lot of STEM applications like MATLAB, Revit, PyTorch, and creator workloads like Premiere and DaVinci Resolve use the GPU acceleration to backstop CPU output. And that could be critical on a CPU family that's, I hate to say this, a little bit processing thread deficient, at least against the competition. Another trend that we're seeing a little bit too much of lately is manufacturers just stepping away from I/O connectivity on their laptops. I mean, if you would see the way that I treat my X1 Carbon at my desk here at the office, it's like the spider at the center of a web. So I have this visceral hatred whenever I see ports being eliminated. I think I'm going to start a campaign. We got to bring back the USB-A port on every single laptop. I don't care if it adds like 0.5 millimeter. It's so important. And the amount of connectivity Intel's been able to pack into their SoC is pretty impressive. There's the possibility of 6 USB 2 and 2 USB 3.2 ports, along with 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, all packed into the one platform controller tile. The lack of Thunderbolt 5, well, that's a little bit of a miss, but I'm thinking that was done for power savings. The only thing is that how laptop manufacturers use all of that potential is a completely different matter. The last thing I wanted to talk about is, believe it or not, Intel's Evo certification. It's not really something that we've focused on simply because of the fact that the entire program was a little bit nebulous to me and the guys here at the office. There was no clear communication between Intel and us when it came to what it took to be in that Evo program. But now there's a little bit more clarity, and for Lunar Lake, things are going to be communicated a little bit better, I'm hoping, to consumers. This could directly affect the way that you go about laptop shopping, because with Evo certification alongside the 200V series, you'll now know a device will have certain features like walkaway lock, Wi-Fi 7, better webcams that are backstopped by new audio and video enhancement, and the list goes on. There's still a lot of murkiness here though, like what kind of image quality does the new camera metric include, and what's Intel's actual standard for this new sort of cool and quiet metric. Hopefully we get answers soon. So I guess that's pretty much it. That is Lunar Lake in a nutshell, and I'm really excited to start testing these devices, especially when it comes to battery life. But what is completely evident here is that Lunar Lake is Intel's sort of like Hail Mary play in the thin and light laptop market. They've done everything possible with this architecture to make it as efficient and, not only that, performance per watt focused. How that plays out throughout the rest of this year and into next year, we're just gonna have to see. But I'm crossing my fingers here because, like I said earlier in this video, more competition is better for all of us. So anyways, I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Lunar Lake, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.